Today is a rundown of the 6 transgender autobiographies that I read during 2022. All of them I will be giving links to their Amazon link in the description. So I'm going to give these in the order I read them. So first book I read, Being Jazz, My Life as a Transgendered Teen by Jazz Jennings. Jazz became well known when 3 major things converged in her life. First off, she became comfortable with herself at a very young age to scream to the world who she is. 2, she had something many of us do not have, a supportive family, which is amazing. This is becoming a lot more common than it used to be, but she has an amazing and very supportive family. Third, she got national attention for what she was doing. She wasn't the first transgender youth. She just got national attention for it. She ended up on events such as Oprah and 2020 with Barbara Walters. This autobiography was written when Jazz was just 16 years old, and it sounds like it was written and read by a confident teenage girl. I say read by because I did read the audiobook version of this, which was read by Jazz. Before listening to this autobiography, I had not seen anything about Jazz Jennings. I had heard the name, that was about it. I had not seen her series I Am Jazz, which was in its first season when the book was released, and is now in its 7th or 8th. Even without the backstory of everything that was going on, even without knowing anything about Jazz, I was able to understand more about this beautiful girl. I would like to recognize, though, that Jazz has a lot of privilege. She's white presenting, she has a supportive family, she's, I'd say, upper middle class, I'm guessing. So she's got some money behind her. She's got all these privileges that has allowed her to be the success that she is, that many of our transgendered youth do not. Jazz is a passionate young lady who knows who she is and is not afraid to reach for it. Her flaws are apparent in her story, but so is her strength. The second book that I read was More Than a Flag by Monica Helms. And this is actually the only book in this collection that I actually physically read. And that was only because there was no audiobook version of it available. Monica Helms is known to be the creator of the transgender pride flag, which you can see here. This book really was my least favorite of the collection. It was great to get an understanding of the woman behind the transgender pride flag. However, I felt that this book was more of a rant and less of a story. She spent a lot of time making excuses for some of the decisions that she had made instead of learning from those decisions in order to move on. Now, I'm going to be honest, many people do this. I just feel that this particular book did it too much and could have really used some work from an editor. I believe it was self-published, and that is very evident in the writing style. Not that there's anything wrong with a self-published book, but I believe that this particular self-published book needed some editing to make it a little bit more entertaining. She does have an interesting writing style, which does add to the value of the book. If you know any good books for me to read in 2023, I ask you to please leave a comment. I would love to have a good collection of books to read in 2023. The third book I read was Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist Sellout by Laura Jane Grace. She refers to herself as an anarchist sellout because you find out she was a rather well-known punk rock artist, and Many of the followers of punk rock consider you a sellout if you start making money, basically. And she wanted to make enough money to live. So she actually made money while she was doing this. She got a contract to work for particular labels that some of the punk rock artists were like, how dare you? Hi, Michelle. Anyway, Jazz Jennings was super cute and full of mermaids and sparkles and all of that, where Laura Jane Grace is kind of at the other end of the spectrum. She is more dark, and she was nowhere near as confident about coming out. She struggled with coming out, like many ladies do. She was scared that she'd be rejected, and she did not come out until later on in her life. She was actually already a successful punk rock musician before she came out. And then in the middle of her career, she gave up pretending that she was a guy. This is a powerful story with a much grungier side, lots of cursing, and not as much polish. This is probably my favorite. However, the fourth book I read, Me, Myself, They by Joshua M. Ferguson, now Luna M. Ferguson. They changed their name. This one I connected with more. So while I enjoyed Tranny by Laura Jane Grace more for the story, this one I connected with more, and I see more of me in Me, Myself, They than I did in any of the other books. This is, again, a very different turn from the other three books that I've looked at so far. Luna is, I will use Luna even though the author of the book is Joshua M. Ferguson, because they changed their name to Luna after the book was published. Luna is very female presenting, again, assigned male at birth, like I said all these books are. However, is very feminine presenting, but considers themselves to be non-binary. And that they are big proponents of the use they, them, and their, and of non-binary rights. They were actually the first to get the X gender marker on their Ontario birth certificate and later their driver's license. While I myself do not connect well with the they, them, their pronouns, this works really well for Luna, and it's really interesting to look at the perspective of somebody who really cares passionately about the they, them pronouns and how they can be used. I'd also, if this is one you want to read, I want to warn you that this is a rough story. Luna recounts some scenes that may be hard for many to hear, including being beaten and nearly killed for their gender identity and being sexually abused. They've survived more than anyone wants to go through, more than anybody should go through. But they have come out stronger, more powerful, and more beautiful because of these hardships. They have done a great job of making them a part of them, but not letting them overtake them. The understanding that they have brought to the concept of non-binary and the work that they have done for everybody that connects with that non-binary and with the non-binary pronouns, if that's what the person wants. Just understanding that, even if that is not who you are, I think that is a great reason to read this book. Before we move on to the fifth book in my list here, if you've gotten this far, that means that you like this, and I would really appreciate just hitting that thumbs up for me. Thank you. Number 5 on my list is Tomorrow Will Be Different: Love, Loss, and the Fight for Trans Equality by Sarah McBride. Sarah McBride moved on to be the first openly transgender member of any state's Senate in any state in the US. Sarah McBride has the strength to be a politician as well as be transgender while being a politician. This takes an amazing amount of strength and an amazing amount of privilege. She was friends with the Delaware governor even before she came out. At the time she came out, she was friends with the governor, and the governor supported her in that decision. Having those kinds of supports is a huge privilege that not everybody has. Being the first openly transgender member of a state senate has allowed her to work to bring rights to transgender people, not just in her state, but across the country. The policies she helped put in place have made it a safer place for people in Delaware, and many of those policies that she's put in place, as well as people that she worked closely with, has made it safer for transgender people all across the country. We could also argue that some of this work has had a backlash that we're still seeing right now. While working for the governor of Delaware in her teens and interning with the Obama administration, she was able to make friends with a lot of powerful people, including Joe Biden. She recognizes that she has privilege because of this, because of her connections, and because of her skin color. She recognizes these privileges and uses those privileges that she has to support others that do not have those same privileges. The writing style that she has is very mature while being a happy and cheery story. However, I don't want you to think that it's all cheer. The chapter about her love for her husband and the loss of him, I can feel myself tearing up right now just remembering that chapter. At the time I was listening to that chapter, I was driving an hour and a half to meet a friend, and I'm listening to this chapter and tears are just running down my face as let's just say that I was glad that I was not wearing makeup at the time. The final transgendered autobiography that I read is Redefining Realness, My Path to Womanhood, Identity, Love, and So Much More by Janet Mock. This is the only transgender autobiography by a person of color that I was able to find in audiobook format. I did find a couple others in paper format, which I might read this year, but it's the only one I was able to find in audiobook format, and that's how I prefer to read my books. But Janet opened her soul and talks honestly about the darker side of trans life, particularly for those lower income and those of color. Janet did not have the privilege that some of these others, she does not have white skin. She does not come from a wealthy family. One of the things that I really, really like about reading several books from different authors on a very similar topic is that we get different perspectives. And I'm going to be honest, I had trouble connecting with this book. I don't come from the same place she does. I've been to Hawaii once when I was 8, so I don't connect that way. I'm not a person of color, so I don't connect that way. I've never had that really low class, low income perspective that she has, so I didn't connect. But I do think this was a really, really great book, despite my not having the background to connect with it. One of the things, like I said, getting that multiple perspective, this allows me to see things from a perspective that's not mine, that I don't connect with, and understand it a little bit better. I highly recommend anybody from an upper class to read this book. I don't care if you're interested in trans studies or not, but understanding where she is coming from, understanding some of the difficulties that she goes through by coming from that lower income bracket is very, very helpful. So basically what I'm saying is my inability to connect with this book made it a lot more powerful for me. I also think that the more memoirs we have out there on a topic that is important to people, such as trans topics, the more autobiographies, the more memoirs we have on that topic, the more we can connect with the people. So I encourage you, write down your story. Write down your story, make it available. If you've got a story to tell, tell it, because somebody out there may connect with it and may make some connections that we do not have. And that's one of the great things about having read 6 different autobiographies with 6 different perspectives. In the comments, I would love it if you could tell me the best memoir or autobiography you have read about trans or not. Maybe it will end up being on one of my future best of lists. If you want to know more about transgender people in history, I suggest watching this playlist. Thank you and have a great day.